Right. I did make you a co-host if you're going to be recording.
I am recording. Thank you.
Okay. Yep. Good. All right. Let me go ahead and bring it up then. Got to remember to share the computer sound because I always forget that. All right. Can you see the PowerPoint?
Yep.
Okay. Great. All right. I'll go ahead and just jump in. So my name is Victoria Hilt, and today we are moving from knowledge to action. I am the co-chair for the Alliance National Parent Partnership Council, and we have created tools to help build stronger families.
One of them today, really, so I'll send him out an email.
And build stronger communities and help provide some stability during this time in COVID.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Victoria Hilt y yo soy parte de la
So over the last 10 weeks, I've been walking through the discovery or rediscovery and elaborating on the 5 protective factors. In the last 2 weeks, we started answering questions based on everyday actions that we could take to help strengthen those protective factors and in your own life and in the lives of people that you work with, families or individuals. If you've been with us for the last 10 weeks, the next few slides will look familiar and the exercises might kind of seem like a record on repeat, but it's important stuff, so please listen closely. And I just realized I said for the last 10 weeks, last 9 weeks, today's week 10. So we'll go ahead and keep moving. So this information is for just trying to get an understanding of the main themes that carry throughout the protective factors. There's a logic model involved that helps us see this bigger picture and understand how the protective factors work together and the importance and value of having parent partnerships in the process of building strong families. We'll touch on a few things such as how policies can impact the way that we build those protective factors. And we'll review a few things in terms of strategies or everyday actions that you can take. But really, we're trying to wrap this whole series up and really identify like what has changed and how you view these protective factors and how it might change the work that you do. So by that same token, I want to make sure that you really understand the protective factors framework and how you as an individual can help someone else build those protective factors. And then also recognize the role that those systems and policy changes I was referring to can change the way that we see a new normal in families. You know, very often it's common to hear, well, that's just the way I've always done it, so that's the way I'm going to do it. But we have the ability to change this idea of what normal is, which is a pretty powerful concept. And hopefully by the end of today, little webinar, you'll be able to feel confident and able to integrate these ideas into your work, or if you've already done it, then to continue doing so, knowing that it is a very strong method. So the protective factors are characteristics that make a parent, child, or a family more likely to thrive and less likely to experience negative outcomes. And we've covered that over the last 9 weeks. It is essentially the opposite of a risk factor. You can think of protective factors as what helps children and families thrive. Again, there's the parental resilience, social connections, knowledge of parenting and child development, concrete support in times of need, and social and emotional competence of children. The best way that I have found to remember them is by using your own hand. The 5-finger posters were created by a Parent Leadership Council, which is why I like to use them. You can visit their website at www.whatmakesyourfamilystrong.org, and they have the information available in both English and Spanish. I'm going to walk it through this one last time, and hopefully you can remember it and carry it through with you as you're going about your daily life and you're thinking about what makes a family you're working with truly strong, or maybe even yourself. If you're having a rough day, you can remember that your thumb stands for social and emotional competence of children, because a thumbs up is one of the first ways we learn to communicate our emotions. And if we understand social and emotional competence of children, then we'll have a better handle of it in adulthood. Your index finger represents knowledge of parenting and child development because you're your child's first teacher. And I think right now a lot of people feel like they're inept or incapable of teaching their children because school's out. But remember that you were the child's first teacher to begin with, and you were there during the infancy, and you were there when they were a toddler. You've been there the whole time. Your middle finger can help you remember social connections because it should never stand alone, and we all need a positive social network. Emphasis on the positive. Oop, sorry about that. I went too far. Your ring finger stands for parental resilience. Because your first commitment must be to yourself in order for you to be strong for others. Your pinky finger signifies concrete support in times of need because it's the smallest finger and reminds us that we all need help sometimes. So hopefully knowing the 5 fingers can help you keep protective factors strong in both your own individual life, your family's life, and your community's life. This is just a recap of how the strategies work in unison with those everyday actions that you can take to build these protective factors. This is the big picture of what we can plan to do. And with knowledge of parenting and child development, that's to strengthen parenting. With other things, it's helping them build those positive connections or demonstrating how they're valued. And all of those things lead to the protective factors, building those strengthened families, optimal child development, and just better outcomes. Now, strategies like strengthening parenting is kind of this idea. It's not really a step-by-step thing. So sometimes when we say strengthening parenting, we may not have a concrete way in mind of how we might do that. So when we discussed knowledge of parenting and child development 3 weeks ago, I mentioned that early learning providers and individuals that work with families directly have an opportunity to meet parents where they are and view those opportunities as teachable moments. And this is modeling the type of behavior that we hope that parents will do, because we hope that they will see those moments with their children as teachable moments. And so in the same way that we are asking them to model appropriate behavior and interactions, we need to take that opportunity to also have those moments, those teachable moments. So programs that help families also ask those families a lot of questions, and those questions are about their history, they're about their present life, their day-to-day in and outs. And asking those questions, this is done in a very vulnerable space, and what we're asking them to do is microscopically review their own life and explain it to a stranger. And that's like when they get started with you, with your agency or provider or your early learning center. So if a program is going to work with a family, one of the most essential elements that you want to consider is that this family has reached out for help. And so they have taken that first and hardest step in receiving assistance of any kind. And regardless of how they reached out and asked for help, they have done so. And so there's a little bit of respect that has to be given for that, because it is hard to ask for help. It's hard to reach out and admit the lack of knowledge on something. And each person has their own response to the idea of asking for help. And it's normally reflective of your identity and your childhood experiences, your culture, your family of origin, deeply held teachings connected with asking for help. So I see that there are people on, but I don't see any faces, which is fine. But I do have a little activity for us that I would like to do. Because before you ask a family questions that may require more vulnerability, it's important to consider how you would answer that question yourself. The answers to those questions can reveal many hidden biases that you may have within yourself, and that may be occurring with you in your own life and maybe the people you interact with daily. And this awareness and ability to identify those hidden biases can help families to recognize, identify, and process the hidden biases and judgments themselves. Now, I would like to just recognize that right now is a very difficult time. We are going through a pandemic. We're really kind of uncertain as to what the future holds with that, when it will be safe for families to be with entire classrooms of people. We're going through a very politically motivated time with an election coming up. And so regardless of where you stand on that election, line, it's an accelerated and passionate time for people. And then in addition to that, already increasing turbulent times, we now are, addressing some social movements that have been building up over a long, long, long time. And so I would like to ask you some questions and have you respond. And you can respond in the chat box. If you would like, you can do a thumbs up if that's easier. Whichever way is easiest for you to respond. But I would like you to answer some questions for a little exercise that I have. And, hopefully this exploration will help us go into the next stage of our activities today. So I'm going to give you some scenarios, and I'll need you to consider if you would ask for help in the given situation. Now, you don't necessarily have to say how you would ask for help, just a simple yes or no. If you would like to use the reactions option, you can just give a thumbs up if you would say yes, or you can react in a different way. I'll go ahead and read the scenario and then give you a minute to consider your answer of whether or not you would ask for help. So this first one, I just want to give you the setting. So you are in the library and decide you need to use the restroom. As you enter, you notice there are two other people that are also in the restroom. You go into your stall, you use the facilities, and realize the toilet tissue holder is completely empty. Do you ask for help? You know that there are two other people in the bathroom. So I see some thumbs ups. Yes, you would absolutely ask for help in that situation. That's good. Thank you. Thank you for the response. So I'll go ahead and set the next setting for you. Okay, so it looks like we're actually like kind of half-half. Half of you would ask, the other half of you were like, oh no, what do I do? This is really uncomfortable. And it's true, because asking for help does put you in a very vulnerable, awkward space. It's very ooey and gooey and uncomfortable. And I think that it's very appropriate to be discussing that right now in a time where often we're going to be called to that space. So the next scenario I have for you is a little bit more personal, if you can even imagine that. Your family, like so many other families, is having a hard time in the current economic times. You have just added up the grocery money and the bills for the month, and you realize that the food this month will be very short. You won't even make it until the paycheck at the end of the month. Do you ask for help? And it's all right to not have an immediate answer. Because that's a really hard thing to admit. There you are in a situation where you're analyzing your finances, and what are you gonna do? I really like this comment, so I'm going to read it out. In the past, I wouldn't have asked for help. I actually didn't ask for help. Now I would. And so there is a kind of, a curve, right? Where there's a point in time where you would and a point in time where you wouldn't. Another comment, to feed my children, yes, but it would be hard to do so. Yes, I would go to my relatives. I think these answers are very accurate as a depiction of our communities. It is hard to ask for help with something like this. So I'm going to go ahead and take us to the next screen. I mentioned this video the last time we talked about concrete support in times of need. And I mentioned that it could potentially be a very emotional video to watch because of the content. I encourage you to be open to the uncomfortable space that it opens up all of us to. And I have to tell you that the first time I watched it, I was taken aback. And it's just one of those things I think that we just have to start thinking about. So I'm going to go ahead and play it, and then we'll have a discussion.
How many of you think you want to be more vulnerable and dare greatly? How many of you are comfortable asking for help? Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah. That was awesome. Then it sucks. Yeah.
Asking for help from whom?
Right. How many of you had rather give help than ask for help? Okay, so let me just ruin this for you. When you cannot ask for help without self-judgment, you are never really offering help without judgment. So if
Stand up and tell the truth. Okay, let's hear that one again. I gotta write that down.
no,
I hear it better when I write it down.
This one was devastating for me because where are my social workers? Yes. Hello. Okay, so we're professional help givers. But how many of us are good at asking for it? Here's the bottom line. Ready? When you cannot accept and ask for help without self-judgment, then when you offer other people help, you are always doing so with judgment.
Really?
Always. Because you have attached judgment to asking for help. And so one way I got a lot of my worth for a lot of years was helping other people.
Yeah.
But I would never ask for help, which meant every time I was helping you, I was judging you. And when you extract worthiness for helping people, that's judgment. That's judgment. When you don't extract worthiness and you think, I'm just helping you because one day I'm gonna need help, that's connection. That's vulnerability. Yeah.
Oh, you teaching tonight, girl. You teaching.
So that is a difficult video for a lot of people to watch. because it speaks to a truth about ourselves that most often we would not feel comfortable taking head on. And I know that that can be difficult. I would like to open it to the possibility of if you would like to share your reaction to that video. But I ask that you take a moment to sit with the uncomfortableness that Brené Brown has presented to us. She herself admitted that prior to realizing the connection between helping others, she also placed value and felt that she was judging others. So, is it hard to ask for help? Are there feelings associated with this difficulty? Are there embarrassment, shame? I mean, all of these things that you might be feeling right now. Frustration, misunderstanding. No, I'm not judging people when I help them, which is that was my instinct. No, that can't possibly be true. But the reality was I had a lot of emotions tied to the idea of helping someone. And those emotions made it so that when I asked the question, my emotions went with that question. So that was my own personal bias coming through, my own personal perspective about asking for help. So when we're working with families, we just take a moment and consider that question being asked of you, because you're asking a stranger to provide you with that vulnerable information, as well as any of their own personal biases that they may have. There's a comment in the chat, never had that perspective before. Wow. Yeah. There's an entire TED talk about vulnerability and Brené, her experiences with vulnerability and that honest realization to herself. And I don't think I could encourage you enough to watch her. She's really good. But when we're working with families, I think that we need to ask the questions like, what might make it easier for us to ask for help? And that ties into what I mentioned earlier about knowledge of parenting and child development. No one is born with the knowledge of parenting, and no one is born with the knowledge of what is normal child development. These are all things that we have to learn over time. We have to seek out information, and that requires all of us to ask for help. Now, if you're on this call, you are already in the early learning field, either because you work with families in an actual, child facility, or you're a parent that works with ECAP or Head Start, Early Head Start, all of these types of things. You're working with people every day that work with families, or you're working with families just by being a family. And these questions can put us in these uncomfortable spots, but that is a tool for you. The ability to ask yourself these questions is a tool in your toolbox for when you help those families also ask those questions. Why is it hard for me to ask for help with this? Why is it hard for me to get the help that I need to pay my energy bill, for example? There's energy assistance available. Here's the information for it. How do we help those families get over that hump so that they have their basic needs met and they have their protective factors built into their lives, and we provide them with that stability? So to be truly effective with this tool, you'll have to have your own level of vulnerability and be open to the idea that vulnerability is the birthplace of innovation, creativity, and change. And when we work with families, we are contributing to the change that they will experience. After all, change is growth, and change is brilliantly blinding, and it's what we're really trying to do with children is we're trying to build them up and help them grow. So by being vulnerable with them, it allows them to be vulnerable with you, and that trust and relationship is built. So as I mentioned, knowledge of parenting and child development requires the ability to seek out information and ask for help. So to build up those protective factors in families that we work with, we have to require something of ourselves and ask those hard questions. So in order to do that, we have to be able to understand how to build up the concrete supports, because that knowledge, that support of their parenting, that support of those child development stages are a concrete support. In this case, a protective factor is another protective factor. And that's the relationship between the protective factors that makes them so effective. What you see right now is a list of the everyday actions for building concrete supports. That's responding immediately when families are in crisis, providing information and connections to other services that they might need, helping families develop skills and tools they need to identify their own needs and connect to supports. By you creating these in your own personal life, you're able to activate them in your work life, in your community life, in all different aspects. We have a lot of things pushing us in the world right now. Different issues, concerns, and a lot of passionate opinions and feelings. So what I would like to do now is offer up a whiteboard to answer some questions, and I can orchestrate that, but I'll also show you how you can participate with the whiteboard feature. The questions that I have to ask you are, what are the top 3 things you need right now as concrete support? In addition to that, what are the top 3 things your family needs right now? What does your community need right now? And what do you think our society will need to create a better normal in the post-COVID-19 world? But even more than that, in the post-2020 world, because let's be honest, 2020 is taking on different perspectives every which way we look. So I want us to think about those questions, and I'll bring up a whiteboard, and on that whiteboard, if, excuse me, you'll actually be able to interact with me. If you're on a cell phone, you might not have the same options, but I encourage you to unmute yourself and participate in other ways, either by sharing it with the group or using the chat box if you're unable to talk because you're in an area where maybe you can hear but talking wouldn't be appropriate. So what you see on the screen is kind of a quick look into how you can use the annotation tool. So I will be bringing up a whiteboard, and you can actually practice with the annotation tool right now. But you can, at the top of your screen, you should see a green bar that says you are viewing Victoria Hilt's screen. Beside the green bar is a little black box that will say More or View Options with a downward facing arrow. If you click on that arrow, you will get a list of options. One of those options is Annotate. Once you click on it, it will activate the toolbar that you see below. The toolbar pictured has different icons that will activate different tools. And I see some people are experimenting with it already, which is fantastic. The text icon will allow you to type in a text box. The draw icon gives you various forms of drawing tools. The stamp icon will allow you to choose different stamps, such as like a heart or a star or an arrow. The format icon allows you to change the color of your ink for your texting and drawing tools, and then you can undo and redo your own creations. Again, if you're on the phone app, you won't have some options and it will look a little bit different. And if you draw with your finger, it will be quite a bit larger than anyone else's. But you're still welcome to do that. So we're going to take some time and I'm going to open up a whiteboard. And I would encourage anyone at this point to unmute themselves or type into the chat box or start using the texting tool on the annotation toolbar, any of those options, to share about what are your 3 things that you need right now. What are 3 things your family needs right now? And I will add those questions to the whiteboard right now. And if you're concerned about possibly drawing over somebody else's entry, don't worry about that. Just continue, keep going, and I will move it because I have that option. And I see the chat box is going pretty good. And I have some text showing up. It's good. And like I said, please feel free to unmute yourself if that would be helpful too. You can also draw a picture if that would be helpful. I like to draw suns because it makes me think of better weather, which is something that a lot of people are talking about. So I'm going to draw one. And you can add stamps to confirm, yes, I also need that, or yes, that applies to me too. Ooh, chocolate, caffeine, and music. Whoever wrote that, you and I, we are on the same page. 100%. Can I put 50 hearts and stars next to that? Because
That would be me.
you and I, we're right there.
My son just brought me a Pepsi, so I'm very, very happy right now.
Caffeine. And I think it is a really difficult time right now. I mean, for some of us, it would be to have the support of attending a peaceful protest from their family. If somebody is struggling, to have that support. It could be that they need more information in order to make better decisions about what they want to support in this current situation. COVID's dangerous or it's not. We should be in our homes or we shouldn't. There is a lot of information out there being sent to everyone. And it's a little intimidating sometimes. And I think we have to normalize that a little bit. Provide these opportunities where you're able to share all of this rich information. And what I see a lot of is that we need to remember to take that free time for ourselves. We need to remember that our kids need that free time. You know, even if the teachers are contacting us and we're stressed out because we're not teachers. Nobody taught us how to be teachers. We have each other, and you can still reach out and ask for help and be vulnerable, because through vulnerability we build those relationships, and from those relationships we are stronger. Relationships build resiliency and better social and emotional skills. And there again, the protective factors loop in on themselves. Each protective factor is built into another one. And when you start to see that they are all connected, everything falls into place. And it's not that it takes away any of the potential difficulties that will happen in life, because let's be honest, life happens. But what it can do is provide stability during that time, because you already know that you're going to get through it, because you have the protective factors built up. And my hope is that from this conversation and from these last 10 weeks, when you look at a situation or a family or a person, instead of risk factors or potential barriers, even though those are important to identify, it's so important to recognize what is already built into that individual and that family or that community. I went to high school in a very small town, and my graduating class was possibly 98 people. And we did a rally in protest of the Iraq War. Now, at the time, I was young, and I went there and I said, I support our soldiers, but I don't support the purpose. I don't think I truly understood what I was doing there. But the point was, I wanted my voice to be heard. It was a scandal in my community at that time, because how could our youth be going to this protest? Half of the community came from military families. It was a scandal. My grandparents, who still live there, just recently posted about that town and how they're supporting one of the causes of the situation right now. And I think that that's just so important that we remember that the different aspects of our lives build us up, from the smallest to the largest bits of our community. And I love all the responses that we're getting right now. But my community that I am from came together and realized what they needed for them to be strong. They also did that during COVID. When it first happened, there's a lot of older individuals that live in that town. It's very small. It's a retirement community for sure. And how do they function? There's younger individuals too, but there was a big concern for my grandparents. All of their people that they were associating with needed help to do the most basic of things. Community needs protective factors. So individually, as a family, as a community, it is what keeps us strong and keeps us functioning through many different crises. I have a couple more chats that came in where I was sharing with you about my hometown. And I'm going to post them, and then I'm going to go ahead and save this whiteboard because I think it's so very strong. If you would like to save the whiteboard, you also have that option on your annotation toolbar. Anyone can save it. And I like this one that says society needs connection with others and understanding cultural diversity, because it really speaks to that need for connection. And Brene Brown says the best way to get that connection is through vulnerability. And that's being open with each other and having the discussions that are hard and being in that ooey gooey uncomfortable space. You can either lean into it or not. All right, almost done pasting this in. And if you've never used the whiteboard feature before, I hope that you're taking this as an opportunity to kind of play with the tools that are available. I think Zoom is going to become one of those things that's going to stick with us for quite some time, even after COVID. So now that we've kind of talked about this question of like, what do we need? What do we need and what do we think the future is going to hold for us? I want to just kind of bring us back to the opportunity to share some what stuck out to you moments. So looking at everyone else's responses, looking at all the different ways that we're responding to the questions about what we need. What sticks out to you? So I've cleared the whiteboard and you have the opportunity to put, again, what sticks out to you the most about the 5 protective factors, how to integrate them into your life, how to help build them with families that you work with. What sticks out to you about building stronger families and communities through the protective factors? And again, if you want to put it into chat or if you want to unmute yourself, either way is okay. You can also just add it yourself. But this is an all-encompassing question of what sticks out to you about the 5 protective factors, the way that they connect, and the way that we use them.
Victoria, I'm not sure if this is what you mean, but one of the things that stood out to me or stands out to me is the social connection, especially right now when, you know, I mean, some places are just opening up to phase 2, some places still are not. And then even when you are there, you still have to keep a social distance. You got to wear a mask. And especially with the age group of some of the families we work with that are birth to 3, where it's that social connection that really builds their brain development. So that's kind of where I kind of lean to, because it's like we can't build that social connection through a Zoom lens or you know, on the phone or whatever. So how can we encourage and support families to do that when that is so vital to their child's brain development and function. So, I mean, not to stand on a negative, but that's just something that has really weighed on me over the last few months, really, when talking to my staff about, we're checking in with families, which is great, but what else are we doing? And how are we providing them that same support via a computer screen or a text or an email, when it's so much of it is built on that human and eye to eye or touch,
Yeah.
So I think something that stands out a lot to me is how do we build and support that and keep everyone safe and healthy.
Yes, interactions while being safe and mindful of the, what are they called? A lack of words, but best practices, right? So there are no best practices for a pandemic. So how do we do this with best practices for something that nobody's ever gone through before? And how do we determine who's, an authority on that? And how do we decide who to trust on that? And how do we interact and be mindful of those practices? How do we teach families to teach that one-to-one contact, that touch is important? And I think I appreciate you unmuting and saying that, because I think when you're looking at this whiteboard, it's very clear that the need for social connections and positive social outreach is just so important. And that is what we are all very lacking right now. And in that same token, I think that you can pull that out and say the resiliency factor, which is on here, that plays a huge part in it. Our children are very resilient, and they will learn a new normal as we learn that new normal. And so those protective factors fold in on themselves again, and create that ability to help them navigate this and build those social and emotional connections. I appreciate all of you contributing to this whiteboard. I think it's a beautiful collection of the time that we spent together learning more in depth about protective factors. I mean, obviously the protective factors are integrated into Head Start and ECAP functionality, and their standards, but it's important to dive deeper into the protective factors and really, really look at it to find how comfortable we are with them. Because in order to help teach our families the protective factors, we need to be comfortable with building them in ourselves. So I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint now. Here is the link again for the tools that the Parent Partnership Council that I'm a part of has provided. These tools are focused on building protective factors and building stronger families, preventing child abuse and neglect, and just this really clear awareness that building parent partnerships and speaking with parents and finding out where they are in their journey is essential to that success. I would encourage you, if you have not yet, to look into the Birth Parent National Network. They're a really great resource for parents. They're having weekly caring conversations. Today, their discussion was based around this idea of what if 2020 isn't the end of the world? And what if the youth guide us into a new world? And what if this is the world, or this is the year that changes the entire world? And so it was left with this positive feeling, whereas when everyone came into the conversation, there was a lot of angst, anxiety, frustrations, fear, distrust. We left with this more vulnerable connection with each other. But the key word there is connection. The link is on the slide. It's ctfalliance.org /partnering with parents. As you can see, both parents and organizations can apply to join. And so you could represent an organization that works with families, and that would be really helpful also, because then you could connect. You could be part of that connection, connecting the dots between us all.
Victoria, are those conversations open to everybody, or is that just like a special thing for you guys on the network, or what does that look like?
They are open to anyone. They would prefer that you register as a member first. When I say that you have to apply, it's not like you apply and they interview you and, you know, you have to wait. There's on the website, there's a form that you fill out, and it's just basically to keep track of who their members are so that they can see if somebody's, you know, hacking their conversations or not. They are open to everyone. You can visit the website and there's links to register as a member or sign up for their conversations, look at their tools, and they're just really authentic conversations. It's really beautiful. And from people all over the country, which is really awesome.
So this is birth parents. I'm sorry, you've probably answered this before, but this is birth parents, as in like, so this would not be like an aunt or something who's taking care of a child. What does that mean?
I am really glad that you asked that. So the Birth Parent National Network works to promote and champion parents as leaders, but they have everything from birth parents to kinship caregivers to foster parents to individuals who have adopted children, like the whole scope. They work with all of them. But what they do is they work on child welfare system reform. So that's what created the Birth Parent National Network, is working with families who might have had negative experiences in the child welfare system or successfully graduated out of that system and have now built this network of parents that are there to support one another. But they do work with the entire spectrum of caregivers and guardians.
Great. Well, thank you, Victoria.
Oh, they also work with foster kids themselves.
Oh, that's excellent.
Yeah.
So is this your final one?
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you, Victoria, for doing all of this. It has been an incredible amount of time, and I don't know if those of you on the call know, but Victoria is a volunteer doing all of this work, and really appreciate you taking the time. We have a plan to organize this better and put up all the videos with understandable names and descriptions on the YouTube in some sort of a fancy playlist type setup, and then all of the links to the materials as well, so that this will be available longer term and with all the separate things if you missed any. So I want to thank you, Victoria, for doing this, and thank you to
My
everybody
pleasure.
who is here.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, and I hope you all take this and use it well.
Bye bye, you guys.
Thank you.